This is a Mitsubishi Colt, and don't you scoff for 1 second. This little car is steeped in Mitsubishi history. It had design input from Pininfarina. Heard of them, haven't you? They designed all the Ferraris you love. It was made to look like an Evo halfway through its life, although admittedly not the pre-facelift. And it was given the coveted Rally Art badge at its facelift as well, all while humbly transporting the masses. So for the Mitsubishi Colt, let's go. So in terms of engines, you could get a 1.1 litre, a 1.3 litre, a 1.5, or you could get the Rally Arts 1.5 turbo as well. There was never really a bad engine fitted to the Colt platform. Honestly, I would say if you're looking to buy a car like this on a budget, the much more important factors when deciding what car to buy or what car not to buy is going to be the general condition and lack of faults that we're now about to go on and cover. Now, somewhat bizarrely, there was a 1.5 diesel fitted to these Colts. Now, it's not a bad engine from a reliability standpoint, but given that this is primarily a little city car, a diesel engine doesn't really suit its personality, and not to mention it likely doesn't conform to the latest ULEZ regulations either, so you can't even take it into a city. I would probably avoid the diesel on that front alone. Now, something definitely worth mentioning is when you buy a budget car, you want it to remain a budget car and not cost you a load of money in maintenance. Now, all those engines mentioned, bar the 1.5 litre that you're going to find in the Rally Art Colt, use a timing chain opposed to a timing belt, so that's going to keep maintenance costs low. You don't need to swap it as often. Now, I never want to hear that we don't pick nice backdrop scenic vistas for you, and by being here I'm getting absolutely swarmed by flies. You can probably see me swatting them away and moving around the car a lot to get away from them. Now, this next problem relates to the dump valve. Now, that's only going to apply to the Rally Art Colts because they're the only ones that got a turbocharged petrol engine. Now, the problem doesn't come from factory, it comes when owners swap that dump valve out, which is originally a recirculating dump valve. You swap it to an atmospheric one so you get that cool swoosh noise when it lets the air go. But the problem is that wreaks havoc with the various airflow sensors on the Colt, so really it's best avoided. So the Midlife facelift came to the Colt in 2008, and we've seen three fairly significant changes to it at that time. Number one, the front end was redesigned to look a bit more like a Mitsubishi Evo. Number two, the diesel engine was dropped altogether, cited by bad sales performance. And number three, the sportiest Colt, the one that got the 1.5 turbocharged engine, was renamed from the Colt CZT to the Colt Rally Art. What actually tended to go wrong with the Colts then? Well, it all starts here with the key. Now, you need to remember 20 or so years ago, this was quite an early car to get remote central locking. I had a Ferrari 360 from a similar era, maybe slightly older, but it had a big horrible fob, so it's pretty cool that Mitsubishi got this integrated into the key as early as they did. Now, the problem is, as you lock or unlock the car, you can see the lights flash. However, double check the doors because they don't always do what they're told. They either remain locked or unlocked, but it's a great negotiation point. Bring it up with the seller, save yourself a bit of money. Next up, we're on the move here because, believe it or not, these little Colts had an immobilizer from factory. So where I want you to look is just to the left-hand side of this display here. Blink and you'll miss it as you turn the key. See that little symbol that pops up there? Well, that relates to the immobilizer that's built into these Colts, and if that little signal stays lit and the car doesn't start, you're going to need a techie with the proper diagnostic equipment to work out why the car's chosen to immobilize itself. Now, you may notice my center screen here is off, and honestly, I'm kind of okay with it because as they're starting to fail, they can make the most horrendous electrical buzzing noise, and it's so much worse than it just being off. So if you buy one of these cars and you're getting an electrical humming noise coming from the dash, it's probably that screen about to fail. Now, something else you may notice, my Colt here, despite not being a CZT, has some very snazzy CZT Colt seats. The one thing I have noted on this, and I've heard it from other owners as well, is that as the miles start to creep up on the car, the bolsters can wear through and you're left with the steel frame of the seat poking through various bits of it. So just be aware of that, not very pleasant. Now, the windows can be notoriously sketchy as well, so check that they're working. Now if it's a convertible Colt that you're buying, I will bet you money that all those windows will not be operating as they should be. What happens is the wire that operates them basically ends up just in a big tangled mess inside its housing. So double check on any Colt that you're buying, but especially if it's a convertible. Now one more note on the convertibles as well, the seals on the roof were not the best, and 20 years on it's not a problem that's improved with time, so unless it's been overhauled, expect a couple of leaks. Probably comes as no surprise, on this aging Japanese car I'm going to mention that rust can be a problem. Now dare I say it, these seem to be faring slightly better than similarly aged Honda Jazzys, which I guess is one of the competitors for it, but even then, do what you can to have a good look underneath the car, particularly the sill area, and also have a look at previous year's MOTs, have a look for any corrosion that's been noted, any rust, and also any welding that the car's previously had. Now if you don't know how to look at old MOTs, drop a comment below and I'll quite happily show you. Let's talk gearboxes. Now by far and away the most common gearbox that you're going to find in a Colt is this, the 5-speed manual. Good gearbox, nothing terrible to tell you about here, don't worry. Although something it has received criticism for since the cars were new is that the reverse gear has no synchro mesh on it. Now what that means is if you pull up really briskly and throw it into reverse, it's probably going to crunch. Now the correct way of selecting reverse really is to pull up, become stationary, select first gear, then select reverse to allow everything to slow down and mesh correctly. So if you find on that test drive that selecting reverse quite quickly when you've came to a stop results in a crunch, it's not a problem, they'll all do it, it's just the lack of synchro mesh. Now on the automatic front, you could get the Colt equipped with a CVT like the Jazz has, or a 6-speed automatic. Now these are both good gearboxes, but they do require the oil changing a bit more frequently than that of the manual. Probably the worst issue that's been seen on these Colts is that the automatic gearbox actuator can stop working from time to time. Now oftentimes we'll get away with just dismantling it, cleaning it, re-greasing it and refitting it, but if you're unlucky enough it could skin you around £700 to replace that part. So if it is a CVT or automatic gearbox, just make sure that everything is nice and smooth, there's no jerkiness, and if it's the automatic, make sure it's changing gear as it should be, not hanging on to gears forever or abrupt changes or anything like that. Anyway, if you don't mind, I think for the rest of the checks, we'll get this little puppy out on the road and go for a bit of a drive. Now there is no other way that I can describe driving one of these Colts other than it's like piloting a housefly. And honestly, if you listen closely, it kind of sounds like it too. Let me just say this though, in today's world, it is so refreshing to have such a little lightweight, simple car. Everything's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The little Colt takes it back to basics, and honestly, I really quite like that. I admire that. Now here's one thing to be on the lookout for, and that is the steering not self-centering. Now usually I would diagnose that as very warm ball joints, but on these little Colts, more often than not, it tends to be that the steering rack is starting to corrode internally. Now when that happens, unfortunately, there's no real way around it. You're gonna need to fit a refurbished steering rack. Again, not cheap, but if it's anything like this car, wherein it has it a little bit, but honestly, I would say it's perfectly livable. Just bring it into the negotiation, save yourself a little bit of money back, and live with it. Now this next point might be a little bit generic, so please do excuse me if you've been buying cars a long time, but for those of you who maybe haven't, or this might be your first car, something to be on the lookout for is the front end sounding and feeling just generally a little bit loose. The road we're on here is perfect for diagnosing this. It's a little bit rutted, it's a little bit rough. Let's let that man in his very nice Porsche out. And if you hear it as being a little bit loose, chances are it's worn bushings, it could be the shock absorbers just getting tired, it could be a host of things. So again, another point to bring into the deal, negotiate a little bit off and then get checked out once the car is in your ownership. And there you have it, you now have all the tips you need to go off and find yourself a brilliant little Mitsubishi Colt. But don't click off of this video just yet, hang around and see how it scores on our reliability leaderboard. Well, as comes to us all with age, the reliability starts to dwindle a little bit, but that being said, this is still a very, very solid, low budget, used car proposition. Now rust starts to creep in, a few of the faults in this video might start to become apparent, but hey, that's why we make these videos, so you can go out there and separate the good examples from the bad. Now overall, we award the little Colt a very, very respectable 8 out of 10. Now thank you so much for watching, please do hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and we'll see you next time.